Everyone, and welcome to today's video where we have some news out of the state of Florida for the 2026 Florida Senate race, where a Democratic candidate has officially entered. Jennifer Jenkins is now officially entering this race and running against Republican incumbent Senator Ashley Moody. So bringing it all down here, in an article from Matt Dixon of NBC News, it mentions that Democrat Jennifer Jenkins has officially entered this race and details her history, including beating high-profile political opponents in the past. During her 2020 run for a school board seat in a conservative-leaning Southeast Florida county, Jenkins won by 10 percentage points over the Republican Tina Descovich, who would go on to become a co-founder of the Moms for Liberty movement, an influential national education group focused on parental choice. The win, especially by double-digit margins, was considered a significant upset at the time. Now, Jenkins will once again try and play a political spoiler during the 2026 midterms. On Wednesday, she announced her bid for the Senate against U.S. Senator Ashley Moody, a Republican who was appointed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in January and was then quickly endorsed by President Donald Trump. Republicans have built a more than 1 million person voter registration advantage in Florida, one of the country's largest swing states, and are expected to have a heavy cash advantage over Democrats heading into the midterms, a dynamic Jenkins said she is prepared to go up against. I think being a non-traditional candidate who understands the struggles everyday people are going through will resonate across party lines, Jenkins told NBC. I think Democrats have conceded certain conservative parts of the state, and I think that is really obviously a bad choice. The Republican Party of Florida chairman Evan Powers slammed Jenkins' record on a series of education-related culture war fights shortly after she entered the race, saying the best the Florida Dems could do is Jennifer Jenkins for Florida for Senate, who stands for forced masking of kids, men and women's sports, men and women's restrooms, he posted on X. If parents dared to question her judgment, she called them domestic terrorists. Moody's campaign and Moms for Liberty did not respond to a request for comment. The year that Jenkins won her Brevard County school board seat by 10 points, Trump won the county by nearly 17 points, which she said speaks to political crossover appeal in a state where Democrats have not won a Senate race since former Senator Bill Nelson's re-election in 2012. Jenkins, 38 years old, is a teacher and has been increasingly involved in statewide Democratic politics in recent years. She considered running against former U.S. Senator Marco Rubio in 2022 and has become an increasing presence in Democratic politics, notably playing Representative Katie Britt in a Saturday Night Live style skit at the party's statewide convention last year. But she enters the race already at a disadvantage. Moody has more than $2.2 million in the bank and the universal support of the White House and the Republican establishment in Florida. The RNC this month also used a little-known rule that will allow it to begin spending money on Moody's behalf during what would normally be considered primary season. Moody is now expected to face significant Republican opposition. So that's the latest on Jenkins entering this race. As for the race itself in Florida, this Senate race is up in 2026, and if you're I would say a very close observer of U.S. elections, you would know that this election is not usually taking place in this midterm cycle. This is a special election because Ashley Moody was appointed to fill the remainder of the term that was left by U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, who is now serving as President Trump's Secretary of State. So that's why there's a special election that we're up. There are lots of Republicans who are being considered for this race. Ultimately, Moody gets appointed. Moody is now declaring running for re-election. The only notable Republican that's talked about maybe running for this race would be U.S. Representative Corey Mills, though as President Trump has already endorsed Ashley Moody in this race, and she has the endorsement of Rick Scott and several U.S. representatives, she's probably not going to face much of a significant Republican fight, even if Corey Mills did ultimately decide to run. On the Democratic side, Jennifer Jenkins is officially the first Democrat to enter this race. Now, a long list of Democrats have filed paperwork to run for this race as well, most notably being Alan Grayson, the former U.S. representative from Florida's 9th District, as the most notable challenger. 4 other Democrats have also publicly expressed interest in this race, including Jerry Demings, the mayor of Orange County and husband of former U.S. Rep. Val Demings, Jared Moskowitz, the U.S. representative from Florida's 23rd District, who is currently running for re-election, but if his district got redistricted into a safe Republican one that he had no chance of winning, it wouldn't be impossible to imagine him jumping from running from re-election to potentially running for Senate. Angie Nixon, the state representative from the 13th District, and Alexander Vindman, a former director of European Affairs at the U.S. National Security Council. It should be worth noting another Democrat that was in this race was Josh Wheel, who was the nominee for Florida's 6th District in the 2025 special election. A lot of media attention came out of that one. He ultimately withdrew from the race back towards the end of July. Right now, Jenkins does have the endorsement of former U.S. Representative Debbie Mercarsel-Powell in this race, who was the Democratic nominee for Senate in 2024 against Rick Scott. So, as rather this Democratic primary plays out, it's going to be interesting to see, for one, if any of these Democrats, Demings, Moskowitz, Nixon, or Vindman, ultimately jump into this race, as a lot of them probably have higher name recognition than Jennifer Jenkins does. But thus far, I think there is a real possibility Jenkins could become the Democratic candidate. But it's really contingent on if any of these other Democrats who do have history, at least being elected statewide in Florida, like U.S. Representative Grayson, or Moskowitz, or even potentially Jerry Demings, would it give a tough fight for Jenkins in this race? But even still, that's a conversation for a later day. Right now, it's too early to say which Democrat will win the primary. As Jenkins is the only Democrat currently in the race, I'll go off the assumption that she wins. As for the general election, though, this race is looking to be a very tough fight for the Democrats. Inside Elections has it as solid Republican, Cook Politico has it solid Republican, and Sabado Crystal Ball has it safe Republican, and this was all as of August, like mid-August of 2025. So pretty recent consensus on that. Rachel White House does have it listed as lean Republican from September 4th, 2025. But again, I think they're certainly the outlier in this regard. I think Republicans certainly favored to win by a large margin. Now in 2024, Rick Scott's Florida Senate race went to the Republicans by 12.8% against the Democrat Mercarsel-Powell. That is a likely Republican rating, but a pretty substantial one in that, especially as the early polling in this race looked like Rick Scott could potentially be in a little bit of trouble. Most of the rankings did have it as likely for the Republicans, but there were a few that did have it as lean for the Republicans, like Decision Desk HQ and Real Clear Politics. Now, the polling on this race heading into Election Day showed Rick Scott leading by about 4.7, 4.8% or so, depending on the poll you were looking at. Certainly a lean Republican lead, but not one you would really expect for Florida in 2024. You would expect Rick Scott to lead by a larger margin. Ultimately, the results ended up being a lot more of a larger margin when everything was said and done, but still worth noting that that was relatively competitive on terms of the polling. So it's possible we could see a Senate race in 2026 based on the 2024 one, where the polling ends up looking a lot more competitive and the race ultimately happens. We're heading into Election Day. It's possible this race could be a 5 to 6 point polling race for Moody versus Jenkins or any of the other Democrats. Democrats start saying they're going to win the race, and then on Election Day, Republicans turn out, end up winning by a lot. That's certainly very possible based on how 2024 ended up going. Now, for Marco Rubio in 2022, he defeated the Democrat Val Demings in this race by about 16 points, 57.68 to 41.27. Now, this race, kind of a sign of things to come, both in 2024 for Trump and for Rick Scott, showed Rubio doing really well, especially in Miami-Dade, in Palm Beach, in Hillsborough, and Tampa, and in Pinellas with St. Pete as well, and Clearwater. So it showed Republicans doing massive overperformances here, including making a lot of gains in the Orlando area as well. In this general election, also the predictions for this race were all likely Republican. For Rubio, 538 did have it as solid. For the Republicans, Fox News, Real Clear Politics had it as lean. The polling, again, Rubio leading in this polling by about 8.8% on Real Clear Politics, 8.8 on 538, showing a likely Republican win. Ultimately, when everything was said and done, Rubio ended up winning by about 16 points. Now, obviously, 2022 and 2024 overall, one was a Republican expected to be a good midterm year. The other was a presidential election where Republicans ended up doing very well. In both instances, the polling in Florida seemed to underestimate the Republicans when everything was said and done. 43.2 for Demings, Rubio 52.1. It ended up being 41.27 for Demings, Rubio 57.68. So the last two Senate elections could tell us Republicans and Ashley Moody will probably outperform the final polling data based in 2026 based on the prior two election results, assuming everything remains the same. Now, in a different election environment, that may not be the case, but we can expect the Republicans are probably going to win here without too much of an issue in 2026. So for the 2026 Senate map, obviously this is not going to be too much of a surprise. I do have Florida starting out in the safe Republican column after we just saw Rick Scott win by about 14 points or so. I think we see Ashley Moody win by a little bit over 15 points in 2026. Yes, it is a Democratic expected midterm year. But then again, we've also seen Florida trend a lot to the Republican side in the last 10 years or so, and I think we're going to see Florida continue to be a solid GOP state. So Ashley Moody wins this state by more than 15 points in my latest prediction, which also has the Republicans at 51 Senate seats, Democrats at 45, with 4 left up for grabs. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts on any other future video ideas you would like to see me go over. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in a future video.